Let's let it go.
Dr. Rosie Milligan, one of the most sought-after speakers on the circuit today. Her live internet talk show, Express Yourself, is the most provocative, thought-provoking, and talked-about radio show on the internet. There's no holds barred, and Dr. Milligan puts the B in bold. She brings it every Tuesday live at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Dr. Rosie has been proclaimed the most provocative female writer of the century. Her books include Satisfying the Black Man and Black Woman Sexually Made Simple, Why Black Men Choose White Women, and the book Nigga Please. These books have raised eyebrows across the country. She has authored 21 books and published 350 titles for authors nationwide. Check Dr. Rosie out at drrosie.com for her books, articles, and archives of her internet talk show. Sit at the feet of wisdom. Dr. Milligan is indeed a timekeeper and scorekeeper. She is the clock, calendar, and almanac for Black America. You need to hear her.
Well. Woo! Good morning. It's top of the morning. It's hot out here in sunny California. I wished I could send some of this heat to some other place, but you know how it is. It is what it is. You're listening to the Express Yourself Hour. I am your host, Dr. Rosie Milligan, coming to you live with nothing but straight talk. You know how we do it around here. Straight up, no chase. My co-host is the wonderful, the fabulous. You guys know how I do it every week. I'm in at these sorries, trying to find another adjective in which to describe him by. I just keep coming up with he's black, he's wonderful, he's intelligent. He's none other than Mr. Keith Swanson. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Dr. Rosie. Yeah, we're enjoying this Indian summer, as they say.
Yeah, I think it was over 100 yesterday, 105, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, if you didn't believe in hell, you might want to rethink it. Oh, you guys, we have a great show for you. Using that word hell, black folks is living it right now. So if they have to leave here and go into another one, they may not even feel the pain. I don't know if there's any more pain to feel. They're already feeling all they can feel. So yeah, it might be a little better. I don't know. I'm just saying, you guys know how I do it. I just say things up in here. What's coming to my mind comes out sometimes. We have a great show for you today. A long time a guest for my show, a dear friend of mine, one that I call the economic prophet. You guys know how we do it. And those who've heard him through the years, I know you would agree. He's just absolutely awesome. He's none other than Dr. Claud Anderson, forensic historian on race matters, and the top black economist and political analyst. He's the author, he's the founder of the Harvest Institute, the only black think tank in America. He's the author of the Blueprint book to save Black America called Powernomics. And this long-awaited book is here, you all. His long-awaited book is here. A Black History Reader. 101 questions you never thought to ask. You talking about powerful. Mm-hmm. Woo! I love this book because I can, you know what I like about it is that you can go through the table of content at Keith and look at the question that you want to get the answer to that we never thought to ask. Instead of just wading through the book and you find it as it comes. Because I like to skip about through books anyway, and I went straight to question number 10, which was with racism, and then I went to 24. I just flip-flop back.
Yeah.
But the book is called A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Our topic this morning is racism. Racism is not Black America's major problem. We're going to let Dr. Anderson tell you what really prohibits Black America from thriving in America and worldwide. Now, you need to get on that phone and start calling people and tell them they need to tune in because this is a show that you should dare not miss. Good morning, Dr. Anderson.
Good morning, Rosie and Keith. How are the two of you doing out there?
Great now. We got the master.
Great. Yeah, sitting at the master's feet. We doing good.
We're doing good.
Well, I heard it was hot out there, and Is there a connection between being hot in hell and hot in California, all those forest fires? You're going to have fire in hell. Is there a connection between those two things?
I began to wonder.
Yeah, well, well, there's no fires in the ghetto. Let's put it that way. Thank God for something, huh?
That's why everybody, they talking about gentrification. That's why everybody's trying to get back to the ghetto, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they should have. Rosie, I told them 27 years ago that the next ghettos in this country won't be inside the inner city. It's going to be in the suburbs.
Yes, you will.
Because as these blacks foolishly demonstrate, what we are talking about today is inappropriate behavior patterns. Mm-hmm. They'll run like crazy trying to follow whites to the suburbs, so white folk can get them out in concentric circles, radiating further and further away from the city. And once whites get way out far enough, and the cities deteriorate through what whites practice called scorched earth policies, which means in these inner cities we'll extract out all the wealth, all the businesses, and the political clout, move that to the suburbs, and so those cities can't function appropriately. And once they go down in value, well, we'll double back, flip back, come back, and pick up the land inside the cities for almost nothing, and bring in a bunch of immigrants to replace black folk who are now moving in concentric circles further and further into the suburbs and to what they call the outer burbs, the exoburbs. And once they get out there, we'll have those Negroes exactly where they were 100 years ago.
Wow. Oh, that's deep. You'll have to repeat that again later in the show, because that is so profound, so profound. Well, Dr. Anderson, everybody's all up in the air. Everything come out of their mouth is racism. I can't get a job. It's racism. I can't pay child support. It's racism. My daddy left my mama. It's racism. Or it's post-traumatic syndrome. I'd just be glad when we get up off of some of these titles, some of these words, and really take a look inside and see what's holding us back. I said to someone the other day, I said, if all the white people vanish from the planet, all the Hispanics leave and go back to Mexico, if blacks have the same mindset, they'd still be running around in the wilderness 40 years trying to find their way out.
Now, what is that term you just used? Repeat that. Post-slavery, what again?
Post-traumatic slavery syndrome. That's what's got us, we've just diagnosed ourselves. Racism that's got us. It's post-traumatic syndrome. My mama left me. A million excuses.
That is so funny how our black folk can conjure up all these new terms that don't mean a darn thing. I mean, years ago, when I was a kid, when a person worked and swept the floor, they were called a janitor. Now they call him a sanitary engineer. And when women in the house are called wives, and now they call them domestic engineers. I mean, and when a person IQ was less than 50, they called him a moron, idiot, or imbecile. Now they call them intellectually challenged. That post-traumatic slavery, that's all game playing. Playing with terms that signify absolutely nothing. Tries to make a distinction without making a difference.
Just coming up with names, like, years ago when you were just shacking. Now it's your domestic partner.
Oh, yeah. or when you date a girl and you get her pregnant, you would say, people say, well, you knocked her up. Now she's got a baby bump.
My God, words, playing on words that doesn't lead us into place, take us down the road to take us further and further from the destiny and from our real calling. And racism is the biggest one. I'm so sick of people talking about racism, So Dr. Anderson, talk to us. I know that's the first thing I went to in your book, A Black History Reader. 101 questions you never thought to ask. The first one I went to and started reading was number 10. When it talked about racism. Most black folk don't even know what racism is. Can you please, just give us a little synopsis so they can go somewhere and shut up and sit down and get about the business of doing business?
I'll be delighted to, Rose, as I said, but I do this with some difficulty because I've told black folk this over and over.
Oh, wait, 1 second. Caller on 681, we're going to come to you as soon as Dr. Anderson finishes explaining racism, okay? All right, Dr. Anderson.
I said I've been telling black folk this for at least 40 or 50 years what racism was, and still 99%, as you said, still don't understand what it is. And they continue to exercise inappropriate behavior and outright rank virginous ignorance over what racism is, which profoundly disturbs me. I said nobody can come to this earth, and it's not rocket science to understand what racism is. Racism never existed on this earth until about early 15th century, around 1503, somewhere in that general time frame. You never had racism on the earth. You might have had people hating each other. You had tribalism at worst, and nationalism at worst in various European and different countries, but you never had racism. And racism never came into existence in the 1500s, and it came into existence indirectly because of slaves being introduced into Rome in the early about 1445, between 1445 and 1450, when Henry the Navigator went around the coast of Africa and picked up about 16 blacks, Africans he caught off the coast, and kidnapped them and hauled them back to Europe, to Italy, and gave them to the Pope, to the Vatican, as gifts. Gave them to him as gifts, and suggested however they want to use them as slaves, however they want to, around the Vatican. And so the Catholics then picked up that whole concept of saying we're going to have some free bodies here, and that we're going to work. And they used those blacks starting from about the 1450s all the way up to about 1489, 87, 89, that general time frame, when Pope Innocent came out and said, and at that time, because the Catholics had accepted the responsibility of preaching this mumbo jumbo about always being kind and helping people and saving people's souls and all that stuff. But at that point in time, the people were talking about slavery, but slavery was based on another factor, and the Catholics had been intervening to help slaves. And at that time, slavery was based on three things, Rose and Keith. And by 1889, up to 1889, slavery was based on, one, was personal indebtedness to an individual or somebody. They could hold you as a slave. Two, it was based on if you were a prisoner of war, that they could hold you as a slave. And three, it was for religious persecution. Those were the only three factors that generated a justification for enslaving people all the way up to in the history of the world up until 1487, 1889, in that time frame. And when Pope Innocent came out in 1487, 1889, he says, if you want to have slaves in the future, do not enslave them for those three reasons. What I just told you: personal indebtedness, religious persecution of prisoners of war. He said, we have had them here in the Vatican for over 40-something years, and we found they were excellent people for slaves, and they were these black folk. So at that point in time, he told them, do not slave anybody but black folk. And that was in the late 1480s. Then about 5 years later, Columbus discovered America. But in the course of that time, Europe was undergoing massive criminalization, pathologies, diseases, famine, and everything else.
Only down here every now and then.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, somebody, okay, he hung up. Somebody was on hold, but then they had not muted that phone. Okay.
So at that point in time, when Columbus discovered America in 1494, at that point in time, he discovered they had all this vacant land that was not being fully used and occupied by so-called, that really didn't exist, Native Americans. He went back to Europe, and as I said, by the 1500s, Europe was undergoing massive problems, social, economic, and scientific or health problems. They were undergoing massive deprivation from hunger, food stamp, diseases, and famine, and they were totally destabilized. And they found, when he told a report, there was some vacant land in the Western world, which later called the Americas: North America, South America, Central America. And then at the same time, they was discussing what Pope Innocent had declared, is use these people as a free labor source, which is black folk, and you can use them as slaves as long as you don't follow the other three things before you relieve the Catholic Church of any burden of looking out for them. And that was about 1503. So when they put the two together, they wanted new land to work so people can try to raise crops to feed themselves and get away from the disease and famines. And they also they had the blacks as possibility of slaves. At that time, they created a new concept. Before that time, the primary factor or a driving element in commercial activities was called mercantilism. And at that point down, they said, well, now let's practice something called capitalism. Capitalism means that time, like to say, take what you need is capitalism is to take the land own and control the land, the tools, the resources, and use someone else's labor to enrich yourselves. That is capitalism. You hear all these blacks in America that don't understand what capitalism is. I'm going to be a socialist because I hate capitalism. Capitalism means owning and controlling the land, the tools, and the resources, and using other people's labor. That's how capitalism came into existence about 1503 in Europe. And then those Europeans then began to come into America because they were being invited over here then to come to America and get all this free land and free labor, and to bring those blacks from Africa with you. And they were picking up blacks off the coast of Africa for about $25 a piece and come to America and sell them. And when they got here, they created a use for them, and they created a whole new concept, what you all call capitalism. And so when they set up the Constitution in 1789, they said, we're going to use these people to build a new world order, a cradle of democracy in this country. And it's going to be founded on some very basic principles. And that is that black folk will be excluded in all regards. They would be a labor class. They'd be 3/5 of the human beings. They'd be equal to a field animal. They'd be non-human. They would be property. They would be property. And based on that, the first thing that Congress did after it was approved in 1789 and 1790, they put out the first naturalization and immigration law, which says this is a white nation. Anybody around the world can come here. As long as they can be declared white or look like they're white, they can get free land and free labor, black labor. And they call that the American dream, that you still hear about Obama and the rest of these silly people talking about the American dream. Come to America and get free land and free black labor. And they did that, to make a long story short, they did that for 300 years, all the way up until about 1859. And during the course of, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Anderson.
Okay.
I want you to wrap that one up and let us take a call.
I'm wrapping it up right now for you. So in 1859, at that point in time, all the resources in America had been maldistributed. They had used slaves that they brought to America, and they had passed on almost 100% of all this nation's wealth, power, resource, privileges, income, land, and controls of all levels of government into the hands of the white society that was coming here, looking as guests, as freeloaders. They were coming from around the world to freeload on America to get free land and free black labor. And they picked up over 100,000 acres. Over a billion acres of free land in the course of those years. Everybody got something free except black folk. And they had maldistributed everything. Black folk had nothing, and all these people coming to the country under the American dream had gotten everything. At that point in time, they called that a race, R-A-C-E, where all these European countries were competing to get to America in a contest of who was going to develop North America, South America, and Central America. From Germans, French, Canadians, Swedes, everybody was competing. And the race ended in 1859. When the race ended, they said, now that we've maldistributed all the resources in this country into the hands of the dumb white society, he only controlled 99% and 1/2% of everything. Now the race is over. So what they did is, what we're going to do now is let's take the E off of race and stick a suffix on it called ISM. ISM means to maintain the prevailing conditions. If black folk had nothing because they'd been slaves for 300 years, the whites had acquired everything under what they call the American dream, they said, let nothing change. And so then the word became, instead of race, it became racism. Racism is a competitive relationship between groups of people that start out originally in Europe that are competing for the ownership and control of resources, power, wealth, and everything, and to be able to misuse, abuse, and subordinate another group of people. Racism is an economic issue. It was always an economic issue. Now, but what white folks said in racism is that now a phenomenon that occurred, physiological mechanism occurred, which says, do not let anything change in between blacks and whites in this society. And then at that point in time, they convinced black folk, and whites went through a psychological change, a psychic response, saying, we got to justify how black folk would never get anything by misusing and converting and distorting and corrupting the concept of racism, so black folk think it's a social issue. At first they thought it was a religious issue. And by the 1900s, it became a personal issue, whether or not you like white people, whether or not you want to marry them, live in their community, go to their schools and their restaurants and their business. So racism started out as an economic issue that enriched certain people around the world, and later on has been commuted into being something that's social in nature. And black folks still think that somehow white folk have misled them in the cycle that as long as you can get along with people and be married to them and go to their schools, that they don't have any racism. And white folk enjoy that. That's a comfort for them. And black folk don't understand what racism is. It's an economic issue. And unless they go back in history and fully understand how it came about as an economic issue between groups of people who are competing. And the reason black folk cannot win is because this time they think that if they can go to a white person's house, go to a white person's school, and a white person's restaurant, and a white person say, I like and love you, that there's no racism. That has nothing to do with the redistribution of the wealth, resources, power, land, businesses, income, and controls of levels of government back into the hands of black folk. Until they do that, racism will always exist. You cannot correct racism by getting along with people. You must redistribute those resources so black folk can be a competitive group of people. And given those resources they were shut out of over 300, now almost 400 years.
Wow, I love that. And that's question number 10 in Dr. Anderson's new book, A Black History Reader. 100 questions you never thought to ask. Number 10 says, what is racism and can a black person be a racist? I tell you guys got to get this book. It's going to answer a lot of questions for you. We're going to take a call right now. We'll go into, I can't see the number. Who do we go to first, Brother Keith? The number's not showing.
I don't know, 323 she's holding. It would be 681.
681, you're on the call. Go ahead. Tell us where you're calling from and state your question or your comment. 681.
681. I guess
I probably talked too long and they hung up.
No, they're still there. They're listening. They're listening.
They still may be unmuted.
You got to mesmerize Dr. Anderson.
681.
Going once?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm here.
Go ahead.
This
Give
is
us your name.
681. My name's John Kenneth Shabazz L. I'm here in Morgantown, West Virginia. And you just happened to catch me when I was out and about here at the barbershop here locally. I was listening to the show. Brother sounds a lot like Claud Anderson. Has he heard that before? Yeah. But
that's because he is.
That's because he is. Okay.
This is Dr. Claud Anderson.
It is Dr. Claud.
Okay. Okay, well, I appreciate you, Dr. Claud Anderson. I've been listening to your videos, getting a lot of good information from you.
So are you going to buy his new book? You're going to buy his new book?
I thank you. Get that new book as fast as you can.
Yes, sir.
Get that new book and try to get all your...
you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead,
I wanted to share something with you because I've been doing research here on West Virginia, and I came in contact with my ancient American ancestry here in West Virginia, meaning that my research indicates that that we got pre-Columbus history here in West Virginia. I checked my bloodlines, and I found out both of them were indigenous, but we still claim the African part of ourselves. We don't get caught up in being African or American. We're both, okay? But I wanted to tell you about this because here in West Virginia, I found out that I had to study the history of the state. I know that West Virginia separated from Virginia. So I did some local research, and I found out that here locally, back in the mid-1800s, late 1700s, right around the time of slavery, there was a congressman that put forth a gradual emancipation documentation in this state, which led to its separation from Virginia. And it was based on slavery, but it was the author's name was Congressman Willie. And I've been doing more and more research to uncover it, to find it all out, because the Gradual Emancipation Amendment is what allowed him to fashion something which appeared to be that they were going along, because at that time, what I understand, around 1863,
Caller,
the Republicans wanted.
It up because we got a lot of callers.
We got a lot of callers.
Okay, I'm gonna be quick. I'm gonna be quick. Okay. In 1863, the Republicans issued a direct emancipation of all the slaves. Right? Okay. In order for West Virginia to come into the Union, it had to agree that it would emancipate its slaves. What they did is they fabricated an amendment to appear like they was emancipating their slaves, and they never did. They was able to benefit for like X and X amount of years and get the labor of it. And we're looking at going back on that and being able to put forth a direct emancipation amendment. And I'm going to close with that, but I wanted to be able to ask Brother Paul Anderson about the possibility of us doing something like Soul City and asking for or demanding that funds be directed for a specific, distinct population where we could develop ourselves and other communities could see that we have the ability to develop our own selves independently.
Okay, now let him answer.
Yeah, I'm going to let him answer.
Okay, yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. And all the 2 questions or the 2 points that you made are contained in the new book, The Black Reader, that Rosie just related to. And that's all in there. It gives you the history and all those things that a black person did because of Nat Turner and all that. That created a stirred an image and a concern in the country. And they did divide Virginia into a West Virginia and a regular Virginia. That was a part of the other reason why they divided, because Virginia needed slaves, but West Virginia was a mountainous country, mountainous area. They didn't have any plantations. They didn't need any slaves over there, and it was much more liberal. And West Virginia is still more liberal today than Virginia is. The second thing you asked about was what was the other thing? You mentioned another concern there.
I was talking about what was it?
Let me
gradual
jump in.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me jump in. I really want Dr. Anderson to really take a look at what our problem really is, like the what we call misbehaving. But one of the things, what both of you talked about is about the slaves and how they needed us, black labor, white wealth. Well, I just want to jump in. I'm coming back to Dr. Anderson. Folks who listen, that's where we are today. Black labor, white wealth. Nothing have changed. It's just under another phenomenon called the prison industrial system. And when we understand what's really going on in this country and things is under just disguised by a name, and we don't see it as slavery because we put a new twist on it. Until we understand what we really need to do, instead of running around talking about racism holding us back, what are we doing to ourselves? What do we inappropriate behavior? Dr. Anderson, I want you to lay it out because I know you know how to do it. You laid it out in your book, A Black History Reader, 101 questions you never thought to ask. And everybody on this line not to just get one. You need to get 10 of these books, and you need to put it in the hands of the people that you care about, because people have been so misled and we're on the wrong track, looking for the rooster in the wrong, where do they put them? In the wrong bun, okay? So, Dr. Anderson, we really, this line is, this phone, this airway is packed because black folks really want to know what's wrong. What can we make a change? Because we're in the ditch and we got to come out. So I really I know we can get it off into history. I love everything you all are saying, but I want to get to the nitty gritty, talking to you black folks. You done told them racism is not their problem. Racism is not what they think it is. This thing is about economic control and power. And as you say in your book, a black person cannot be a racist because they cannot control and they don't have the power. So let's talk about what's wrong. What do we need to do?
But what we need to do is to be able to go back again. And what we should have done initially.
Okay, hold on, Dr. Anderson, real quick. Caller 681, can you put yourself back on hold?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Anderson.
What they have to do, Rosie, is to go back to what you heard me say so long for the last 25 years or so I've known you. They have never focused on the real cause of the inequality in America. And that was, as I said, that race that took place, which was a contest with those Europeans over 300 years that maldistributed the resources and the control and the power and the wealth into the hands of the whites. When they came out of slavery, the one attempt was made, but it was corrupted again by the power structure and the institution in this country. In 1857, when Dred Scott went to the courts and says, "I'm a free man. I want to be able to go out and do some of the things that the whites want to do and act and get some of the resources, and I want my rights to get something." And the United States Supreme Court under Judge Taney says that a black man in America has no rights that a white person is bound to respect. And the reason they said that and got away with it was because the Supreme Court agreed, was because the first Constitution in the United States, the first 12 amendments, is an affirmative action plan for white folk. It was put in place in 1789 strictly and solely for white folk. Our people keep committing inappropriate behavior by going back to I got Constitution this and Constitution that. I got rights. You don't have any rights. The first Constitution gave black folk no right. They say you're property. Property has no rights. Property cannot own anything. And black folk were defined and classified as property. And they stayed as property up until 1866 and 65 when they put out and a few radical Republicans tried to correct that and said you would never solve the race problems in America unless you make some changes in the inappropriate behavior pattern of whites and black. He says only two things that a black person can be in this country. You must correct the Supreme Court decision. You must the black folk must be either slaves or they must be free. But to be free, they must have minimally 40 acres, a mule, and $100. And that was what put out by the Congress in 1865 by congressmen like Charles Sumner, Stevenson, and Benjamin. That says that became what they call their first civil rights law in 1865. Says that black folk can never be anything unless you redistribute what Anderson has been telling y'all, the resources in this country, and give them minimally something. Otherwise, they all be slaves. And immediately, Andrew Johnson killed that and vetoed it. The congressman came right back the next year in 1866 and put it out again. Says black folk in this country cannot correct the problems in this country. You can talk about all the stuff you want them, but you're not going to correct it until you redistribute some resources and power and wealth into the hands of black people. And again, he vetoed it. Johnson vetoed it a second time. But the second time, the radical Republicans, there was only a small number of them. They were liberals who were married to white women and had black babies. Married to black women and had some black babies, and created Howard University. But they then wrote it again, said you got to move the resources. So the civil rights laws of 1865 and 1866 tried to address that problem, saying your key problem is that you do not own and control a darn thing in this country. You'll always be a slave, and racism is in effect. That's racism, which makes sure black folk never got anything. And when they put that out, then the Congress put out three things. One is called the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment. They tried to correct that by saying 13th Amendment says that black people in America must be treated in all manners, similar to the way white folk are treated, and they must exercise all means to redistribute and lift the mantles and the burdens of slavery off the shoulders of black folk. Mm-hmm. But the reason that never went into effect, Rosie, is because the North then, the Civil War ended, the North did not want blacks coming north. They didn't want to see any blacks coming north, and the South needed them because what they did, they took those amendments, the 13th, the 14th, the 15th Amendment, and they corrupted them. The North and the races in this country corrupted the 13th, the 14th Amendment, and the civil rights laws, and they corrupted them by pretending that they applied to everybody, that they didn't apply to blacks, that they were for everybody. And black folk went along with it, believing that the 13th, the 14th, the 15th Amendment, the civil rights laws for everybody. So white folk who had all the rights and privileges they ever wanted in this country in the first 14th Amendment, first Constitution, they corrupted the second Constitution so black folk would never own and control a darn thing. And then and they turned around and after the Civil War and gave back all the land that the Southern whites had lost. They gave it back to the Southern whites. And then even they set up a Freedmen's Bureau to give black folks something. Whites went in there, poor whites went into the Freedmen's Bureau and stripped away all the resources and got back all those farms and lands. And once they got the land and farms back, they then told the North, we need these blacks down here. We just can't have them as slaves, but we need some free labor. Yep. And so then the North let them have it and gave blacks back to them. So never, whether the Civil War time or after the Civil Rights Movement in 1960, blacks in America have exercised inappropriate behavior. They've never tried to go back and say, how do we quit talking about getting along with people? How do we go back and seize control of some resources, power, and wealth? How do we build our own businesses so we can be a power group? Getting along with people is not the issue. The issue is when will you get enough sense to learn how to own and control resources, power, and wealth.
Wow, that's a mouthful. That's a mouthful. We have a new caller from 202. 202, go ahead. Give us your name, where you're calling from.
Hi, this is Jessica. I'm calling from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. And I'm going to keep this brief because I'm a huge Dr. Anderson fan, and I love me some Dr. too. But I just want to let your listeners know that I have read the Black History Reader numerous times. Numerous times. I've even dog-eared pages and highlighted passages because this book to me is more than just a read. It's an education. I learned so much. And like what you said at the beginning, Dr. Rosie, is I love the fact that all the questions are listed in the table of contents. So I can go back and forth and I can choose where I want to start. And this book has made me quite militant. I do more arguing with people about books, and then I can pull out my book, a Black History Reader, and say, okay, if you go by this book and look on page so-and-so, you'll see exactly what I mean. So thank you, Dr. Anderson, and I'm looking forward to reading Powernomics. That's the next book of yours I'm going to read. So thank you so much for enriching, I can never say that word, enriching, there you go, the Black community, because you give us exactly what we need. And all we have to do is take what you give us and just utilize it.
Well, I deeply appreciate that. And I encourage you to tell all your friends to go out, because the book comes in a set. The first book was called Black Labor, White Wealth, which showed you, it took you through all those 14 years of history, showing you every trick, every technique, every public law, every custom, and the Constitution and the Supreme Court, how they maldistribute all these resources in the hands of white folk, to where whites got almost 99.5% of everything in this country of power and wealth of nature. But the most important point is that 87% of all the wealth and resources in the United States is now frozen. It is locked into the white society. That only 13% is up for grabs. And every time you bring immigrants into this country, you multiply the number of opponents or competitors blacks going to have to get some of that 13%. Whites have locked everything. 87% of everything in this country is locked into whites' businesses, communities, business, schools, churches, bank accounts, trust accounts, and inheritance. That's locked. That's why, and that's out of all the land from Boston to San Diego, that they got 99% of all the land is in white folks' hands. So black folk got to learn how to deal with it. I appreciate that you tell black folk to go buy Black Labor, White Wealth, then get Powernomics that shows you how to play the game, then get the Two Dirty Little Secrets books. The Two Dirty Little Secrets books shows you that you are very special people. Quit trying to beg people to like and love you. Just like I saw on the website the other day, here's some black guy down in some city, I think may have been in Florida. He's out there hugging the Ku Klux Klan, asking him, why I don't know why you hate me. And that is disgraceful. It's an embarrassment to black folk, for blacks to keep going and bugging, asking white folks to love them. They're looking for love in all the wrong places. And they should. And those books say you're special people and nobody on earth like black folk. Those Two Dirty Little Secrets books tell you why you're special. It tells you that nothing has happened on this earth that black folk did either directly cause or not indirectly involved in. And the last book that you said you just read is The Black Reader. This tells you that this wraps it up and says, this is the game. Here's what you got to do, and you got to do it quickly, and quit listening to these civil rights leaders, quit listening to the black elected officials, and quit listening to a lot of these black ministers. You got to play as a team, and these books will tell you how to go about doing it. All five of them is a set. You can get all 5 books. You can get and plus a DVD for about $99, and by going to the website, to the Powernomics.com website, or you can get what's called a solution pack, which is Black Labor, White Wealth, and Powernomics and Black Reader, for about $65. But you got to read those books, otherwise I'm sick and tired of telling blacks the same thing. For 55 years, I've given my life as a forensic. I'm a forensic behaviorist and teaching you all about the history of historical aspects of racism in the world and in America.
Dr. Anderson, is it powernomic.org or .com?
I think it's .com, not .org.
Okay.
No, it's .com, Powernomics.com.
But you want to go there and get your books, and those who are local in L.A., you can go to his website, or you can come to my bookstore, Classic One Bookstore at 1425 West Manchester Avenue. That's just west of Normandy in L.A. The phone number here is 323-750-3592. That's 323 3-2-3-750-3592. This book needs to be a household word. Dr. Anderson, is there a phone number? I think the 564 for people who want to call Powernomics.
Right. For those who can't work the computer well enough, or skillful enough, tell them they can call the corporation. The corporation number is 301-564. What is it now?
Okay.
Joanne
will probably come there in a minute and tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, if you forget it, call. I'll give it to you at 323-750-3592, and I'll give you the corporate number, 323-750-3592. Dr. Anderson, we're talking about the things that black people think that's holding them back, and you talked about inappropriate behavior. Talk a little look at just like you've been in court for all these years, spending millions of dollars trying that blacks can get paid for the treaty, 1865 treaty. And most black people have not sent donation to the Harvest Institute to fight that lawsuit. You put $1 million of your own money. There are other few people who have tried to help. And black folks are walking around saying, well, we'll never get that money. They're not going to give us our money. I mean, why we keep wanting something free? Can you tell black folks that freedom is not free? If they're not willing to the part of their money other than their tithes for churches, we're not going to ever get in place, because many of them don't want to support nonprofit organizations. They're not supporting your institute, but yet they're sitting on their behind waiting for something to happen. They still sitting at the wishing well. Would you please tell my listener that nothing comes to the wishing well? I wish white folk would treat me right. I wish they would give us something. I wish they would give my son a job. I wish. Nothing comes from the wishing well.
Well, yeah, but see, that's what I call inappropriate behavior. Our people have been committing inappropriate behavior ever since slavery. They've been conditioned to commit inappropriate behavior, which means they've been taught to see social engineering and seeing everything upside down and backwards. So they do everything against their own self-interest. That's why they're always talking about, like civil rights. We got to get along with everybody. We got to love everybody. While everybody else put their own interests first. They've been enculturated in their own societies and institutionalized to believe in putting your own self-interest first. Black folk, as a direct from slavery, carry a legacy of saying that as an ex-slave, my sole responsibility is still to put the master before my interests. So I have no interest. So therefore, I must commit inappropriate behavior. And I just got through speaking in Detroit, Michigan about that same thing, Rosie, when they just made a movie called Detroit. And one of the things I was involved in when I was an investigator for the Safe Street and Crime Act in Detroit, Michigan, out on the street when that riot occurred in 1967, and they killed in the Algiers motel. And if they beat those 3 boys in the Algiers hotel, these were 95% all these white cops. They beat these 3 black boys because they caught them in the hotel with 2 white girls. And after they shot 2 of them immediately, and one they beat him half to death. And finally, before they decided to kill him, one white officer, hit him in the head with a rifle butt, and so hard it broke the stock on the rifle and knocked one of his eyes out of the head and bulged the other one. And then the kid fell on the floor. He was only 18, and crawled around the floor and found a broken stock on the rifle. And on his knees, he handed up to the officer and apologized for having a hard head. And that's the same kind of inappropriate behavior that you see every day when you see somebody go into South Carolina into a church and have 9 black folks laid out on the floor. He walks around, a white kid walks around and shoot all of them in the back of the head. And the next 2 or 3 days or weeks, you got a white minister saying we forgive them, we don't hate them, we give them, we're not angry. See, that's inappropriate behavior. Black folk commit inappropriate behavior because they've been socially conditioned not to do anything because of the white ethics code. Whites had a code of conduct that they were put into place during slavery and after slavery, saying that black folk under no circumstances, called black codes later on after slavery, but can you challenge white folk or do anything that's offensive to white folk, insult white folk, threaten white folks, ignore white folks, play games with them, try to imitate them or touch a white woman, and because of that, they list over 3,000 blacks in a 20-year time period under the code of ethics that tells white folk how to treat black folk and how black folk must commit inappropriate behavior, put everybody else's interests before theirs. That's why out in California, anything coming to California will come to immigrants and whites before it comes to black folk. That's why Clinton sent 500. They brought out almost $500 million and gave it to Hispanic businesses in California, and not one penny to black folk. That's why Obama, the president of the United States, he put out over $35 billion to American white Indians, and went down and gave another $3.5 billion to Hispanic kids on the border. But he didn't put one penny into a black neighborhood in Philadelphia, Detroit, and Chicago to do anything. He didn't do one thing to help us with the black Indian lawsuit, getting willing to give us one penny. As a matter of fact, he had the Department of Justice to tell him, do not do anything to help black folk. This is a black, I used the word wrong. He's not a black. This African Americans in the White House. They don't do anything to aid black folk in America, because you open the door, and this nation with old black folk, hundreds of billions of dollars, and we don't intend to give them not one penny.
Wow. You know, Dr. Anderson, here in the state of California, they opened up 200,000 they call Section 8 vouchers. And I was at a meeting when someone was explaining it, and they said, now those vouchers also are for undocumented. Did you hear what I said?
But that's in line. One of the things that black folks should have gone after, Rose, is make up, because we got run out of time. What they should have done when they came out of slavery, what they should have done when it started the black civil rights movement in the 1960s, instead of pushing for social integration, they should have said, let's go back and address the maldistribution of resources in this country and power and wealth into the hands of whites. And you start first by challenging. You got to challenge the Constitution. That Constitution is a mold. It's like if you create a mold right now for making anything, for making a bowl, a hat, and it becomes like a pattern. Well, the United States Constitution is a mold. The first one is a mold and a pattern. It tells you how black folk are to be treated and viewed. Nobody's ever changed it. It's been in effect now for all these 400 years. The second Constitution, which was from 1860 up until after the Civil War, they corrupted that one so to make sure they was diluted and watered down. Nothing has changed for black folk. So black folk continue to commit inappropriate behavior because they've never gone back and challenged that. And lastly, the Supreme Court, that has absolutely no jurisdiction over anything that was enacted by in Congress on black folk. The United States Congress has no authority to say that black folk cannot get things on a race-based basis, because we're a colorblind society. This society was never colorblind. The only time that word colorblind was ever used was in 1896 in the Ferguson decision, Plessy v. Ferguson decision. We were not a colorblind society, but black folk they never challenged the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court was made up, the first ones, you had 57 people appointed to the United States Supreme Court were white slave owners. And since then, you've now put in about another 60 white races. That's why in all these years of this country, you've only had 1.5 black men on the United States Supreme Court. And yet black folk go to court every day trying to get justice. How do you get justice from slaveholders and ex-slaveholders in this country? It's inappropriate behavior until black folk go back and address the real problems in this country. And whether it's racism or there's quit using all these fancy terms that say that the real problem is that you don't own and control anything more than 1/2 or 1% of the country that is competing with you to survive.
Okay, Dr. Anderson, let me take a question, I believe, from 323-819. I think they have a comment. While they're coming in, Dr. Anderson, does the politician, now if anybody knows the Constitution, it's seemingly if it would be them, how do they sit there day in and day out and all these things that you're talking about, they should know, but they're not making one move and trying to do anything about correcting anything in the Constitution? I'll make one other observation. When do you think, we talking about inappropriate behavior, it's like black people act like they're in a coma and have lost their damn minds, okay? We walk into businesses every day, black-owned businesses, that 50% or almost 100% of their employees are non-blacks, and black folks keep going to those institutions who will not hire black people, and they are black. So people have to think we're crazy, and I'm about to say black folks have to be damn crazy to keep going up in business where there's no black person working. It's a black-owned business, and you patronize, you are condoning people to keep doing this stuff to us. And you said, Dr. Anderson, that 95% of all other races work for their own people. I want you all to hear this. And 95% of black folks work for other people. Then how in the hell will we ever come out of the ditch if that is true, if 95% of our people are working for other people, and you know most of them are not going to hire us, then what is the future for black folks? That has nothing to do with racism. When you open a business and you hire everybody but black folks, what does that have to do with racism unless you're trying to practice it your own black self?
Yep.
Well, because again, back to the inappropriate, blacks, in addition, Rosie and Keith, one of the things I've stressed so far during your program today is the fact that is a total maldistribution of almost 100% of all this nation's wealth, power, and resources and stuff into the hands of whites. That's what that injured black folk. It's crippled black folk all these hundreds of years. But additionally, the other thing that was most damaging to black folk were all not only stripped of all resources, but they also stripped of the one thing that was key to them be able to answer the question that Rose just asked. It's called social cohesiveness. We're the only group on this earth that lacks social cohesiveness.
Yes.
We're the most decimated, atomized people on earth, fragmented people on earth.
Yes.
That never can black folk right now ever mount any one single thing where all black folk will collectively participate in it and support it and look after their own people. That's one thing that was stripped out of from you called social cohesiveness. Then all other groups have it. All the other groups understand it. That's why they hire their own people. That's why Asians tell me up front, Dr. Anderson, we don't buy from black folk. When we're selling fish and stuff, we don't buy from black folk because it is against, because black folk want us to buy from them. We tell them we don't buy something if they give us a discount. Because in our culture, we've been socially conditioned that we place our own people first. We only buy from and support our own people. That's why Asians will not buy anything from black folk. But when I do an examination in China or to Asian countries, I found something like 33,000 white or Asian millionaires who have become millionaires off of selling products and services and goods to black folk. But I could not find not one black person who ever became rich off of selling something to Asians. They tell them down in Florida with Carl Nelson's show. They told Carl the same thing. The Asians say, we cannot buy any time on Mystic Radio, Carl. That's a black station. We can't buy anything from you all. Because in our culture, the culture says that a China man can never follow a black man. The black man must always follow a China man. They say, you're the only people that have no culture, no institutions, and no leadership that teach you how to come together and be a social cohesive group. Until they answer your question about social cohesiveness, you're whistling Dixie in a cemetery at 12 o'clock at night, Rosie. It'll never happen. You're going to stay in a ditch for as long as you exist.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you haven't seen
a call, Keith, when you finish. We're going to take 615.
Okay, you haven't seen the Supremacist. You've seen the Chinese Supremacist.
Hello?
I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, 615. Go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. I should say good morning for all the people in Los Angeles, Dr. Rosie, two of my favorite people, and Dr. Claud Anderson. Good stuff, Dr. Anderson. Just finished your book. As a matter of fact, looking at your phone number, looking to book you on the show here in Little Rock. If you just quickly, and I'll go ahead and just ask the question and hang up, could you talk a little bit, because I found that in your book, the Black History Reader, the 101 Questions You Never Asked, talk a little bit about the difference between neighborhoods and communities, because I found that to be so profound, and we'll be in touch. Hope to get you on real soon.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. A neighborhood, as simple as I can put it in as quick as terms as I can, because then you're getting ready to go off the air. A neighborhood is where you eat and sleep. That's a neighborhood. And a neighborhood is like a bucket with a hole in it. You can pour water into it and run right out. A neighborhood is like a Holiday Inn or Ramada Inn. It's where people eat and sleep, and that is not a community. To have a community, you must have at least three core elements in it. And no place in America is there not one. You do not have not one single black community in the entire United States. To have a community, you must qualify on this criteria. First of all, you must have a wholly independent economic structure that is capable of producing services, goods, products, jobs, money, wealth, and a tax base for your own people. Again, to have a community, the first element you must have is a wholly independent economic structure that is parallel to and maybe even outside the mainstream economy. That's why all these other groups build Chinatown, Frenchtown, Poletown, Hockeytown, Little Mexico, Little Saigon, Koreatown, Little Cambodia, Chinatowns, Japantowns, because they got a wholly independent economy that can provide services, goods, and jobs to their own people. Secondly, you must have to be qualified as a community. You must have a code of conduct that teaches you how to supply, support, buy from, hire, take care of, and love your own people. In black folk, we do not have that. We do not have a code of conduct. Our code of conduct is very simple. It's called do your own thing and go for self. Mm-hmm. The third thing you need to have a community, you must have elected officials who get elected to office and who abide by the oath that they swear to protect and serve those who elected into office, and put those people's interests foremost and first in anything they do in politics. Every person we put to office in elected positions, they do absolutely nothing for black folk. There's no connection between putting a black person in a public position, whether he's appointed or elected, that would do anything for black folk. As a matter of fact, they think it's sinful to help their own people. That's why people like Obama. And I found out that back in the 1960s, we only had 300 black elected officials, 103 black elected officials in the entire United States. But between 1960 and 1990, the number of black elected officials in the United States went up over 9,000%. And so I anticipated using the social discomfort indicators. See, what was the difference between 1960 and with only 103 blacks and 1990 with 9,000? I said, surely black folks' conditions have improved. And I did an examination. I found out that not only did black folks' conditions not improve after they went from 103 black elected officials in 1960 up to in 1990 where they had 9,000, but black folk went backwards because there's no connection between putting a black person off. They will not do anything for their own people. I don't care whether he's the head of a church. There are a few that will do it. There are some exceptions, though. There are a few exceptions, but like Harold Washington, Maynard Jackson, there are a few that will do something for black folk in elect office. But 99% of all the people in high positions, whether they're entertainers, they're athletes, or comedians, or elected officials, or appointed officials, they're never going to connect up with black folk. They feel it's sinful to do something for their own people. They're scared, and they have no backbone and no social cohesiveness.
And they won't even address reparation. They wouldn't address the 1865 treaty. And Dr. Anderson, you're absolutely right. Until we call for report card for people who are elected, then it's really on us. Someone, you have a caller in your phone. We're going to have to drop it if that's a noise.
There's a lot of noise in the background, yeah.
Go ahead, caller.
Oh, okay. Sorry about the noise. I just wanted to say thanks to the three of you guys. This is Carl out in Long Beach.
Yes.
Hey, Carl.
I always like to listen to you guys. Rose said it before. We keep doing the same thing over, and it still ain't working. Well, clearly we're whatever we're not doing. I mean, basically we might want to go in the direction in the opposite direction. But I wanted to ask you guys, each of you, two questions. What do you recommend for black folk as a solution that does not entail asking the government for benefits or not just benefits, even for reparations or demanding or any of that, or following the so-called leaders or whatever? What would you recommend? And also not buying from black folk. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm trying to look at other alternatives as well to add. So one, not going to ask for benefits or demanding reparations or anything of that nature. Two, definitely not going to the so-called leaders or whatnot. And I guess this is three. And of course, the third question, I'm just going to leave it at that. The reason I say that is because in this hyper-competitive world, where King of the Mountain is not a multicultural sport, and for every other race but black folk, multiculturalism is Hunger Games, or Game of Thrones. So I wanted to see what other solutions that you guys would have, and for each of you guys to answer that.
Stand outside of major stores, and every time a black person walk into a business where a black person owns the same type business, have people stand there with a baseball bat. I'm getting radical. Knock them out right there in the front of the business. We're going to have to do something drastic to stop black folks from being stupid. I'm just going to say that word. We had a black-owned business here, and I'm not calling the name, who had a Hispanic manager who discriminated against a black employee. The black employee continued to tell this owner how this Hispanic was treating him. He did nothing about it. So this guy, black guy, launched a lawsuit, and I think he won $1 million, and I was glad that he did. That is inappropriate behavior. So you all talking about racism. Racism is not our problem. It's what Dr. Anderson has been been trying to share during this whole show. It's inappropriate behavior. It's not understanding what racism really is. And if you really want to understand what we need to do, Carl, I suggest, instead of buying toys and iTunes, whatever number the phones are now, you all need to get a black reader, a black history reader. 101 questions you never thought to ask. And this is the book I think need to be a family affair. It needs to be a book that you need to sit around and you all take these questions and discuss it with your family, because if we don't get our young people into the right mindset, it doesn't matter what come our way. We will give it right back to the master.
Okay. Let me respond very quickly. I'm going to have to jump off too, Rosie. And
Okay.
that is very, to answer his question, is that he has to be realistic and understand everything in the broad context of what I said racism is in this country. That he has to understand that in this country and on the earth, and all human beings are in a competitive posture. Everything is competing to survive. Every bird, every animal, every fowl, they compete to survive. We got a feeding chain in the world, going from the strongest to the weakest. The weak will always be eaten by the strong, and human beings are in the same bag. And right now, the same thing is true in race and racism. But to be able to feed and to be able to survive is what you own and control. And so that's what, to answer his question very specifically, he must be able to redistribute some of those resources back into his hands. And how does he get it? All my books cover this for him. The only way you can get it is three ways. One, black folk must immediately start practicing group economics and group politics in their own communities. That's the first thing. And right now you do not have not one community, one neighborhood in the entire United States, black neighborhood that would qualify to be a community. All you got are neighborhoods that are like sieves. Anybody can come in and out of it, do anything they want, commit any kind of crime. There's no resources in them. They have about 75% of all the black people in America are centralized around 10 large metropolitan areas. I can starve them to death in less than 10 days, in less than 2 weeks' time, by simply cut off the trucks that are hauling food into those black folk. They don't produce anything. They are just simply consuming and waiting to depend on other people to supply them with food, medicine, energy, and anything else. They are vulnerable. They can be wiped out in 10 days. That's why if a snow comes up to a major city in the United States, that all the shelves in a grocery store will be empty within 24 hours. And they never have any water, food, or energy, period. So unless they start building their own communities and practicing group economics and group politics, they're getting ready to get wiped off the face of the earth. That's the first thing to answer his question. The second thing is reparations. Now, he might poo-poo reparations, but black folk entitled reparations. There's an indebtedness that the white society has. You cannot say we don't want reparations because white folk own and control 99.5%. They're not going to give us anything. Then you play to compete to get it away from them. They're not going to give you anything. If I were white, I wouldn't give you anything either. If I got everything right now, why would I want to give you something? There are no incentives and no motivations to give black folk anything. But that doesn't mean they don't owe me. And right now, if I send a bill to you for some work I perform, if I work for you for 500 years, you haven't paid me, I'm not going to say, let's forget about it. That's inappropriate behavior. So you can either go for reparations is the second way. And that's why the 1866 treaty is one of the ways of getting reparations in this country for black folk. They owe black folk billions of dollars through the 1866 Indian treaties. Also in the Powernomics and the concept, and also Harvard Institute, I got 4 other major lawsuits where black folks should be getting resources and reparations. That's through the Adamant Owners Treaty. Also going to the Freedmen Banks where the whites stole $57 million out of them. That's reparations. I got all kind of reparations lawsuits right on the table. Also, how most of the businesses in this country and all the radio stations, TV stations in this country came off of black labor that came directly from the slavery. The institutions that owned slaves also were the first ones to get all the media and all the major things, the businesses in the United States, insurance companies that were built, and banks were built off of black money stolen off away from black folk. And also, let me put the third one in there. The third one is if you can't get funds, money into your own community by building communities and practicing group economics and group politics, if you can't get it through reparations that you're entitled to, then your last option is you must start somehow to go set up a printing press and start printing your own darn money. And then just like white prints money in Washington, D.C., you got to go get into the business of printing money, whether you call it counterfeiting, anything else. You got to get resources. Those are 3 ways you can get it. You can get it by practicing group economics and keeping your money, making your money bounce 8 to 12 times before it leaves your hands, and go to any other hands. And secondly, attract money from outside the community into your community. Learn how to make white money come into your community, rather than keep taking money out of your community, putting it in other people's hands. And so, if you don't practice those three things, you can forget it. If you can't do either one of those three things, then what you need to do is go out and find the highest building that you can find in California, and go to the top and jump, and tell nobody, don't put no nets at the bottom before you hit the ground. Go, because you got no other recourses.
You know, Dr. Anderson, what you're saying is so true but look, I know the Harvest Institute is the one who basically funding all these lawsuits with the support of some people. Would you tell the listener how they can contribute to the Harvest Institute? It's a nonprofit organization. Can they just go to the harvestinstitute.org? And it's tax deductible. You're coming down to the end of the year, and you're going to need tax write-off. So why not donate to the Harvest Institute, who really doing something for the people?
Right.
So,
What
Dr.
they can
Anderson, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Let me give you a number. They can go to the harvestinstitute.org and make any contribution through the PayPal system. We need the money, but unfortunately, again, inappropriate behavior pattern on our people say, do not give any money to the Harvest Institute, because because the Harvest Institute fights to enhance us, to enrich us, and to comfort us and protect us. Rather, take your money and give it to the government, let them use it to be against you. You see, Harvest Institute is designed to protect black folk. It's non-profit, it's tax exempt. All the money coming to the Harvest Institute could be used to help black folk. But our people somehow they rather give it to the government and pay taxes every year. Rather than paying it rather than writing it off by giving it to the Harvest Institute. And we got about 5,000 white think tanks in the United States with about a $500 million budget and 200 people working for it.
Yes, we do.
And the Harvest Institute, we're about a two-man band. We survive off the nickels and dimes and pennies and a few dollars that come to us. None of the rich people in the United States, blacks in the country, ever give us a penny. We don't beg for it. We don't ask whites for anything, because whites told us they would give us money if we made one change. That is, if we take the focus off of black folk and put it on minority, women, children, and gay people, that they would give us some money. I told them, you keep your money. We would continue to operate as we have for 25 years off the nickels and dimes of black folk. I'm not going to abandon my people just to go out and beg for money for the Harvest Institute. And so, but the last thing I'm going to say, and here's the number I want to give you earlier about when you want to call in for these books, you can call the Powernomics Corporation in Washington, D.C. to get the Power Packs or the Powers and the Power Library, where all of my books. You can get them by calling this number. Here's the number. Get your pencil out. It's 301-564-6075. Again, to get all these books and get them fast, but particularly for Christmas and the Thanksgiving holidays, go to 301-564-6075. That's the corporation in Washington, D.C. You can call there and order the books and pay for them through credit cards. They get them to you within a couple of days. Or it's best and faster if you go to the Powernomics.com and order all we got DVDs, CDs, and all the books up there. You can get them in the various kinds of packs. But if you're going to plan on surviving, I can't think of any other books that I would recommend for you. These books will answer all the questions that you give you all the solutions that you need to be able to survive. And again, I hold some pride in being this nation's only forensic historian on race matters. Forensic, just like a forensic person examines a body in a morgue, it examines the race relations in America and tells you why you're losing and why you don't have very much of a future. I am a forensic historian on race matters. There is not one other black or white in the entire United States, and never in the history of this nation, that has invested 50 years in critically analyzing every document, public document, every law, every policy, every constitution and Supreme Court decision, to be able to determine what the issues are and how to help black folk. That way, I don't have any comparable people. If you don't want to buy these books,
how you doing?
If you don't want to buy these books, then do what you've always been doing. Go buy How Susie Lost Her Groove and Waiting to Exhale and The Color Purple and wait for the train to come get you.
$2.18.
And Dr. Anderson, you know what's I want to say, I thank you so much for coming on this show. And people always want you to come on the show. Dr. Anderson, we want to hear from you. But I want to say this publicly. You know, I'm tired of having Dr. Anderson and other people who just work themselves to death. They come on these shows.
Yeah.
I guess maybe you call it entertainment. It's information for me. But unless you're buying his books that he have put his hard-earned time, he's not published by mainstream America who published his book, who put up the money to help him get his book out. Dr. Anderson takes his own fund to try to give us information that can change our direction. So unless it's just time that we stop just listening to him and not buy his books.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
people need to. I'm definitely going to give 10 a Black History reader because it's so important. It's so easy to read, and you can go to the specific question that you want an answer to. So don't just listen. When you all get off the phone, get through listen, you need to email, Facebook, tweet, whatever you do, you need to tweet this information about this book of Dr. Anderson, a Black History reader, 101 questions you never thought to ask by Dr. Claud Anderson. We must do this if we want to keep our soldiers out here, our think tanks out here. We need to buy that product. He's not writing for himself. Dr. Anderson knows all this stuff that's in his book. Trust me, his children knows. His wife knows. The people he loves, they know this. He's doing this for us. So we appreciate it. We need to show it by having that phone, jumping off the hook, going to the website, and buying these books. So as he begins to talk around the country, go ahead.
Brother, you know what, Rosie?
Yeah.
Rosie, you know what? You know, many times I've seen on the email and or on the on the website where people say, "Only reason Dr. Anderson's been fighting for us all 50 years, and he go out and go all over the country and all around the world fighting for us. Only reason he does that is because he just wants us to buy his books."
Can I give you guys something to think about?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
This is Carl. I don't poo-poo reparations. I believe wholeheartedly. I also believe in that we got to get rid of these Negro leaders. I also believe in group economics. One thing I want to give you guys something to think about. We're at war for survival. I need more than 3 guns. Give me more guns. When I say that, I believe in all that, what you were saying, but I also want more in my arsenal.
No, you got to believe in sweat equity and working together. That's one thing.
Exactly.
Because a lot of Black people, especially Black men, do not want to invest their time and their hard-earned work without getting a dollar. Okay, sometimes that dollar doesn't come till 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years later. Look at Issa Rae. Okay, basically they worked for free for 5 years before HBO picked them up. That's sweat equity. You got to believe in your cause and be down for it. And if you can't put in a dollar, put in your effort. Because that's what we're missing.
Let's make this book a #1 bestseller. That's for us. Now, what happened, other people tend to buy, like Powernomic. There are other ethnicities are buying this book, and they are building institutions based on Dr. Anderson's works. And all we tend to want to do is listen to Dr. Anderson talk, but read his book. He can't give you everything from we on the radio. It is so much to his book. So I just suggest that you buy the book by the dozen. And if you ever want to give a gift, this is a perfect gift.
Yeah, and I'm sure Dr. Anderson got these, wrote this book because he gets asked all these questions all the time. He probably got tired of answering them on interviews. Here's the book. Every question that you've ever asked is in here.
And every question that you didn't even know that you needed to answer to. That's what I love this book for, Keith. It's 101 questions you never thought to ask. That's the problem. We haven't gotten the answer to the question we need because we haven't asked.
You know what, Rose, and to keep the thing that amazes me, once when I was getting ready to run for the Congress, United States Congress down in Florida, and after holding a press conference telling them I was running and filing, and I was going out to raise funds for my campaign, and I went into to had some black doctors. I met with them. I asked them about supporting me financially for running for the office to be the first black congressman from Florida. They said, well, Dr. Anderson, we would give you some money, but I'm not sure because you didn't help me help my mama and when she came to the White House. I said, when'd your mama come there? I said, I wasn't even in the White House then. He said, yeah, but I know that. But had you been there, you wouldn't have helped us. So I'm a whole lot. And tell us again what you want us to do. I said, why is it one thing I never understood? Why is it that I can go into any place in this country? When I was running Jimmy Carter's campaign in 1976, all through the South. Later on, I was his campaign manager, and I was also a deputy political strategist for Clinton in Washington D.C. for his campaign. And I was one brought him into Washington D.C. before when he announced and made the announcement over in Avondale. I made the front page of the paper with Bill Clinton. But one of the things I found out across this country in running campaigns for presidents, for governors, and attorney generals, wherever I went, that I don't care how dumb, how uneducated now, or how ignorant a white person would be, or how poor he is, he always understood social cohesiveness for his people. And whenever an issue came up, just like when I was running the conflicts with George Wallace in Florida, in the South at that time, George Wallace could come into the community. He did not have to explain everything to him. He didn't have to write 5 books like I did and put out over hundreds of thousands of newsletters to explain things to white folk. All he had to do was come in town and use certain code words, welfare queens, pinheads, liberals, and whites, and those rednecks would give him everything he wanted, all the money, and supported him. And yet when I go around and tell black folks, time, as Rose just said, stay on the radio, on radio stations every day, giving speeches in this country, around the world, in the Caribbean, in Venezuela, Cuba, Bermuda, Jamaica, Virgin Islands, or Europe, in France, England, Africa. I got to always spend time after time explaining the same thing to black folk over and over again. They never catch on it. And yet by the same token, conservative, racist, white racist can understand immediately what he has to do to protect his position. But black folk, I don't care how much you tell them and how many books you write, how many newsletters you put out, they still seem to say they don't understand, or it will never happen. Yeah, we could do that, but we're not. I'm tired, Rosie and Keith. I tell them the same thing when George Wallace had just had to use a couple of words, and every white would support him and knew what he was saying.
Yep.
Wow.
All right, it's time to close. Okay.
Well, this show will re-air you all at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you didn't get a chance to listen, you need to tweet, Facebook, Skype, whatever you need to let people know this is the show they need to listen to. They can go to innerlightradio.com at 7 p.m. and they can hear this show. Absolutely, Dr. Anderson, thank you so much.
Yes.
Hope that everybody understand now. Stop using the word racism. Forget about it. Stop trying to make people love you, and just move on with life. And I am making some baseball bats. I need about 10 soldiers. 10 soldiers. I need some soldiers, y'all, to stand with me. We're going to knock them out. Okay?
And Rosie, tell them to quit fabricating all these new words. It doesn't mean a darn thing. And trying to make a difference trying to make a distinction without making a difference. And with all these new words that they keep conjuring up, post-traumatic slavery. What the hell that means? It means that you have not corrected the conditions in 1500. That's what it is.
Exactly.
And, but if they want to call for the books again, the number for the call the corporation, we'll give that, and I'm off. 301 Rosie 564-6075. Call the Power Number Corporation 301-564-6075 and get the books. And I thank you and Keith, you all, and Rosie, you and Keith. I love both of you. Take good care. Take care of my people. Take care of my people. I love all of y'all.
I'm going to beat them. I'm going to beat them, Dr. Anderson. I'm going to beat them.
Oh, well, I'm depending on that. And I'm going to see, I don't know when those people in California can start getting all these books now.
All right.
All righty.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, Dr. Anderson.
Y'all better save some bail money around here. I'm getting ready to beat them.